So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the class. Welcome to the friends who are joining us online. So, you all have this, right? The brochure. Okay. So, we have covered up till organizations, right? We took up CPA, DD before. So, now we will be touching upon accountability and control, administrative law, then moving on to public policy, personnel administration, and then financial administration. And simultaneously we'll try and deal with the issues related to the civil services and the financial management aspect as well. So today we are going to take up accountability and control. Okay, so when it comes to the unit of accountability and control, my experience or my interactions have told me or I have learned that many of you do not take this unit very seriously. As in that the major focus remains on introduction, thought, behavior, organization, administrative law, CPA, to a certain extent on public policy, right? And this unit is often given a stepmotherly treatment, right? But just to emphasize upon the point, this unit is roughly worth of 25 to 30 marks, okay, every year. And generally you will see that the questions are very generic in orientation. What I mean is that if I pull up a question and let us say put it in public administration and simultaneously put it in GS paper 2, right? So that thing works. Whereas if I put something related to, let us say, Taylorism or managerial grid theory, right, or Downs or House, that won't fit into the GS paper 2. Now, this is a trap. The trap is that most of you end up writing generic answers to these generic questions. So what you get as marks is what paltry minimum can be given, because it lacks, apart from the answer writing skill, expression, knowledge, everything aside, that generic undertone in that question. Because when we are in the heat of examination, sitting in that very hall, writing the question, we tend to do things in a very rapid mode. So we see, acha, this is the question, I have the content, this is the answer. We fail to appreciate the point that we are writing an optional paper. Okay, and this is the single most common mistake which is committed by the candidates. So if you all are going to avoid this mistake, you are going to get certain brownie points. You see, boond boond se hi sagar bharta hai. It takes drops, right, to make an ocean. So if you can improve, you can make an improvement of 3 to 5 marks in a nutshell or more, right? And those things matter. They matter a lot. Okay. So now when you will see the questions, like I said, they are generic and they have a high contemporary orientation. So the usage, the linkage of current affairs as appendages. Some of you who have already seen the session regarding answer writing, I talk about the witnesses and the evidences. So evidences are the primary source of argument and witnesses corroborate those evidences, reinforce those evidences. So here in this unit, you will require to actually reinforce that a lot. Far more than, let us say, other units, because there you have first lot of conceptual ammunition to fire. Right? Here what you can write about accountability, okay? Accountability, word is from accounts. Accounts word come from account. Right. Okay, this is very important. This is very important part of good governance. This is very important part to maintain hierarchy. Control is essential to maintain hierarchy. It's a means of supervision. Khatam. है ना? यही है ना? You have a very limited set of concepts. At least that is the conventional wisdom which goes. Now, we will try and make maximum out of this. Also, we'll try and see concepts that can be linked. Just like in a casual comment, I linked hierarchy with control. Supervision with control. Similarly, supervision can be linked with managerial orientation. Your all theories of leadership, theories of management, organizational management will come here. Also, basic. What is PubAd? Can you link? I mean, this is the very mathematical way of imbibing this concept. Can you link accountability individually with each of them and control individually with each of them? Right. So that sort of an intelligent engineering is something that I am demanding from you all to show in the examination and in your answers. So that you stand apart, you stand different. Okay. But please be very, very calibrated in your approach. I don't want anybody of you to appear as jokers just on the pretext of appearing different. So use whatever analogy linkages you can, but they should be logical. They should not be fanciful. So please understand that. Okay? So have I made myself clear on this? Friends watching us online, am I clear on this, or do you have any supplementaries? Okay. Now, just like every new chapter unit that we take up, we'll be having a look at how the questions are coming in, and we'll be identifying the key themes. Now hear this. 2016. In spite of certain advantages, social audit arrangements have mostly been ineffective because there is no legal provision or punitive action. If you recall, just the previous year, there was a finding, a newspaper report on social audit related to Manrega, wherein it was proved that, it was not proved, it was the finding of the report that Kerala has somewhat 94-92% compliance. Rest of the states are not even 50%. Okay, so Manrega is one aspect of social audit that we can relate. Similarly, Jal Jeevan Mission. Also, the whole concept, what's the underlying concept? Social audit becomes the topic. This is how you need to dismantle, break the PYQs, to analyze the themes. Social audit is just the topic. At the heart of it is what? Social accountability. Now tell me another example. All of you are PubAd folks. Tell me another example of social accountability. फंस गए ना? फंस गए ना? है ना? Participatory budget monitoring. Participatory budget monitoring. है? Can you link it with financial management? Right? That is also an example of social accountability. Similarly, whenever you are looking at social accountability, social audit, you can also extrapolate to link it with public policy. Then link it NPM, or rather PCT, good governance. More philosophical level, you can link it with democratic decentralization, participatory governance, participatory democracy, neo-localism, bottom-up governance. कहाँ है linkages ये? है कि नहीं? So while reading social audit, the focus should be on social accountability. The process is there. Rarely the process will be asked. What happens in social audit? That there are social audit teams, wide scale publicity is given, Jan Sabhas happen, Bhagidari, this. These are the pillars. Okay, that's fine. You can draw it in a diagram, but what about analysis? What, why, and how? Right. So all these things, these are the buzzwords, keywords. Understand the psychology. There is going to be a human being who's going to evaluate your answer. The moment these words actually bombard the eyes, you invest that person in your answer. Otherwise, that person is going to have a cursory look. Trust me, an experienced person can evaluate your one answer in less than 2 minutes. You have seen how I reply. Less than 2 minutes. So you are not having the attention, you are not in a dialogue with that person, that you are going to convince that person, nahi sir, maine to aise likha tha, madam, I have written it like this. No, you don't have that opportunity, neither the scope. So you have to invest that person in actually reading your answer. And then the second test begins, that you have not just garnished this randomly. It should all make sense, logic. And then that person will award you the marks. Otherwise, that person is going to see, okay, fair. 2 marks out of 10. Okay, go ahead. You will be stuck forever under 200. Always under 200 you are going to get stuck. If you want to break this ceiling and reach somewhere close to 300, you will have to have more than knowledge. You will not be the first, you will not be the last. There are many people who have had degrees in public administration, public policies, who have not qualified or scored in the examination. Okay? Last year there was a student of mine, she was a master's in public policy from Georgetown University. She cracked it in her 6th attempt and she was damn good, let me tell you that. Then also it took her 6 attempts to crack this exam. So you better start learning the ropes of it. Okay, this argument aside, let's see another PYQ. And this again is very theoretical. Legislative control over administration is not as effective as it ought to be. Now, you can link it in accountability and control, right? Or if the same question comes in paper 2, the same question can come in paper 2, right? That would mean the union government and administration unit. But the answers will differ. I hope you know the difference. Okay, then, so the legislative control is another aspect. And this is all 2016 running. 2016 it was 40 marks. Civil society performs a key role in defending people against the state and market and in asserting the democratic will to influence the state. Role and significance of civil society. Now look at 2017. This question which I just read had a negative conceptualization of state, as in it was putting the state and civil society in a versus situation. Next question. So the content will remain the same. Understand. Next question. Civil society supplements and complements the state. However, its capacity and the role depend on the will of the state. Very next year, 2017. समझ में आया? The same thing. Same thing. Okay. Next. 2017 again. 2017, by the way, it was 45 marks. Okay. When the media is controlled by the vested interest, how can it control the vested interest in the government? How can media become more responsible and impartial? So, the role of the media. Isn't it quite relatable in the present circumstances? But it has always been relatable. Since the time communication has been there, every state has used communication, or the custodians of the state have used communication. Look at Hitler, look at United States, look at Indira Gandhi, look at Narendra Modi, look at Manmohan Singh, look at Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, look at Khrushchev, look at Yeltsin, everybody. Okay. There can be terminologies. For example, media is also called as the fourth estate. Okay. So don't be surprised. Try and interpret. Ghabrana nahi hai. The moment you panic, you have lost it. Stay calm and composed. Have you seen Batman, Joker? Okay. So what is the motive of that Joker? The motive of that Joker is to cause chaos. Right? If he wants to kill, he wants to kill. No emotions, no emotional baggage, nothing. Not even a guilt of killing somebody, not even a remorse of missing a chance to kill somebody. He'll continue to laugh. You will have to be like that. A dispassionate killer who's out there to kill every question. See, there's a certain amount of attitude which is needed to crack this examination, and you'll have to go with the killer instinct. You will have to use every trick, in your sleeve to do it. Yes, ethically, by fair means, not like some of the officers who are being accused, in the present period. But the point is, you'll have to be smart enough. Okay. Next, again social audit. You see, comparison. A theme which comes is comparison. How? It is comparing social audit with the statutory audit or the conventional audit. Right. So the question says, can be said that the statutory audit and social audit are two sides of the same coin? Or are they separate coins with varying values? Okay. Now, here comes next question which was asked in 2018. So 2017, 30 marks. 2018, just 15 marks. This question is conceptual. The political approach to public administration stresses on the values of representation, political responsiveness, and accountability through elected officials to citizenry. This is a statement by David H. Rosenblum. Comment. Now please understand, some of the people can actually slot this question in unit 1 as well, which is not incorrect. But look at the tone and tonality. That is why I say that many solutions which are there in the market are not very good. Look at the tone and tonality. Because zeroing down on the list of units, topics, subtopics which are associated with the question is like demarcating a periphery within which you have to operate. Look at how it is saying. Representativeness, political responsiveness, accountability through elected officials. Isn't it citizen administration interface? So if we look at NPM, the political philosophy is being discharged through the economic philosophy. Now what many of you would write to this answer. Public administration is a child of political science. Completely off track. Chapter 1 type. And even in chapter 1, this is also incorrect. There is a political view of public administration, just like you have a post-decor view, institutionalist view, integral view, broad view, narrow view. There is a political view. There is public policy view of public administration. But all of you or most of you would end up writing, it's the comparison between political science. No, is it mentioning political science anywhere? Political approach, very clearly. And look at the keywords: responsiveness, accountability, representativeness. So it is talking about citizen administration interface. But here you will have to use the learnings from unit 1. Also examples like NPM, how the political behavior is discharged through economic paradigm. अब समझ में आया ये चीज कैसे घूम रही है? Are you guys getting it? समझ में आ रहा है? श्वेता? Yes. Getting it? Okay. Next. 2019 again. Media, the fourth estate, is in chains. Now please read this very carefully, hear this out, and remember the earlier question. The media is controlled by vested interest. How can the control in vested interest in the government, etc., etc.? Same question. Media, the fourth estate, is in the chains. Examine the statement in the context of governmental accountability. In the context of governmental accountability. Isn't the question same? Isn't just like the other side of the same coin? Next, 2020, 15 marks. So I hope you are noting down the keyword. A good approach would be that you take these PYQs, note down the keywords and write 100-worders on them. With whatever knowledge you can, or do one thing. For these PYQs, make frameworks. That okay, this is this, this is this. Just like the line diagram that I draw, so that your understanding gets refreshed. And wherever you are feeling boxed, come back to me. Immediately drop me a message. Right? And that reminds me that some of you have sent me the exercises. I couldn't find time to actually correct them. I'll correct them by today itself. Okay? Yesterday and today morning I have received some mails. So I will reply to them. Next, citizen administration interface again. The question is, thrust on citizen centricity and right-based approaches aim to empower citizen. In light of the above, has the administrative accountability improved? So again, the concept is administrative accountability, but in light of what? Citizen centricity, participativeness. Kiski values are ye? Tell me the paradigm. Participatory management would be the organizational paradigm. Tell me the paradigm of public administration. NPM, PCT, governance, good governance, all of them. Right? Next question. Again, civil society. Now this is a critique of civil society which you might have actually read. In theory, civil society organizations promote cooperation between people and public service organizations. But in practice, their activities restrict the promotion of government programs. Analyze. Now, some of you will take up what? Some of you will take up the conventional TV media 9 p.m. debate kind of approach. That they are agitating, they are this, they are that. But at the core of it is what? You see, okay, that might be improper to ask. Two friends, one boy, one girl, and please, before anyone labels me a sexist, let me qualify, this is just for academic purposes. So one boy, one girl, friends, very good friends, more than friends. Then suddenly the third member enters, either a male or a female. And that third member is giving to the first member what the second member cannot. So isn't it taking the space, time, phone calls, messages of the second member? है ना? वही है state, citizen, civil society. The traditional role of the state was to provide for the expectations of the citizen. Now that thing is being done by civil society. This is the conceptual critique. ठीक है, ये रिलेशनशिप एनालॉजी से बड़ा अच्छे से समझ में आता है. सो ये बना कंधा, हो गया काम. ठीक है. सो द पॉइंट इज दिस, that this is a critique. Isn't this happening? Yes, there can be fears. But the point is that as part of the prevailing paradigm, consensus orientation, accountability, transparency, participativeness, equity and inclusiveness, efficiency and effectiveness, responsiveness, rule of law. As per the prevailing paradigm, which has evolved from NPM, PCT, governance, reaching to good governance, where state, market, civil society collaborate, usage of a networked approach to provide public service delivery. So here you can present both the sides of the argument, but through a conceptual approach. Okay, so what it is doing? No, it is a partner. It reaches where the state does not reach. It deepens the democracy. It deepens the participative nature. It makes or nudges the administration to become more participative, more responsive, more citizen oriented, thereby enriching the citizen administration interface. They act as, I am making those same GS arguments. You understand? They act as a voice for voiceless. They act as advocacy groups, expert groups, advisory groups, implementators. For example, NRLM, National Rural Livelihoods Mission, where you have a SHG and civil society component. Social audit. So many examples. So that is how you will reinforce the point. Got it? Next. Groups work to elevate issues on policy agenda and seek to deny the other group the opportunity to place issues. In this background, discuss the role of interest groups in agenda setting in developing countries. Please pay attention. Interest groups are a part of the larger edifice of the civil society that we might have. Right? So it is about a group capture. That there would be multiple interest groups and some of them will be too dominant. Dominant in terms of strength, resources, financial might, spread, connectivity. That they will influence or hijack the entire policy agenda, squeezing the space for the other groups to actually come in. Okay, this is the critique. So they, while capturing policy, there is an element of hijacking of the entire control of the policy narrative. है कि नहीं? So we need to see this, that while yes, groups help in making the churning on the ground, creating awareness, sensitizing people, you know, etc., etc. That, but they deny the other groups. So the interest group in agenda setting for developing countries. Any interest group, domestic or foreign, right? They might create an atmosphere, they might create a narrative. Why? Because there is an echo chamber, and whosoever speaks the loudest gets echoed more. Okay, so herein you will have to talk about institutional character of interaction and communication so that every voice gets heard. This is your public administration orientation. That the manner of interaction cannot be random, so as to not to cede excessive control to a single player in the larger governance ecosystem. Next, again civil society. Interaction between the state and civil society has hitherto been largely neglected, especially in developing countries. Purely a conceptual question. Okay, so 2022 it has maintained a stabilized trend of 25 to 30 marks. Okay, since 2021 onwards. 2021 it was 25 marks, 2022 it was 25 marks again, 2023 it was 35 marks. Okay, so the interaction being largely neglected. That means, understand this, you will have to adopt a framework for this. Recall the evolution of civil society, Gandhian movement in community service in India, right? Also globally, they were the fringe players. Then gradually they were brought into the policy calculus, merely as helpers. But with the coming up of governance, good governance paradigm, they have become a intrinsic part. But this node of interaction, this is what the question is saying, that this node of interaction has remained relatively neglected.
Interaction between civil society and state.
State. This is what the question is saying, no? Interaction between the state and the civil society has hitherto been largely neglected, especially in developing countries. Now you will have to talk about this, where in West, yes, civil society gets a considerable space. In India, in terms of the policy, in terms of day-to-day governance, the civil society does not. They are merely appendages to the larger agenda, or they are outside groups who are engaged into merely advocacy, agitation. But they are not the part of the core governance philosophy. Why? The reasons. Not any generic limitations of civil society. They lack money, FCRA people hound them. That is for GS paper 2 good enough. Okay. Next, social audit again makes a comeback. Social auditing is not just saving the money, it creates positive impact on governance. So this was till 2022. 2023, 35 marks. And all of them remain in section A. You see the contemporary trend, 2023, with all respect to Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. Okay, before I get, some contempt notice. Okay. The judiciary is playing a more positive role in policy formulation, not just limiting the governmental actions, but also in mandating them. It says comment, a 10 marker, a crisp bullet firecracker like a question. You don't have a lot of wiggle room, friends. It was a 10 marker. So, you see, the question's orientation is positive. More positive role in, and look how in a very underhanded manner it is criticizing the court. बिल्कुल एकदम लखनऊ के अंदाज में गाली दी गई है. ठीक है. That it is playing a positive role vis-a-vis policy formulation. In limiting government action, that is okay. That is the doctrine of, okay, what happened? अच्छा, इसमें ऐसा भी होता है? मुझे नहीं पता था इसमें ऐसा भी होता है. Okay, everything has got paused. Okay, play. Wow, this is fun, yaar. Okay, chalo, we'll wait for a few seconds before it reaches there. Wow, that's cool, yaar. Right, we are back. Okay, so to revise it, very important. Right. So it's playing a positive role in the policy formulation, not just limiting the governmental action, which is a valid role, which is about doctrine of checks and balances. Okay, fairly easy, KG kind of concept for a polity folk or for a candidate. Now understand, but also in mandating them. So you see these kind of questions, they are beyond books. Without having an understanding of the core concepts, you cannot answer them, and you cannot really copy the core concepts in the answer booklet. Now understand, is judiciary supposed to be in the policy domain?
No separation of power.
Otherwise, the no separation of powers, doctrine of separation of powers will go for a hike. Okay, if judiciary is going to be in the policy domain, but a positive role is something which is important. Okay, but mandating them in the sense that it actually is driving the policy agenda. So there is an element of critique. But is the critique very explicit? No. So can your comment, the final deduction, if I trace in a reverse manner, that what will be the final point and I'll trace back. Can it be something that no, this is something which is absolutely wrong being done by judiciary? No. It will have to be balanced.
Controlled by the judiciary.
Right. From the vantage point of control and accountability, you'll have to take it. But this judicial activism should not be turning into judicial adventurism. The policy should remain within the remit of the state. But as the last port of call, as the last ray of hope, judiciary is trying to play its part as the final custodian of the national interest. Something like that phraseology can be made. But this thing should be done in a sparing, rare and a very, very conscious manner, because it will disturb the balance of doctrine of separation of powers. And now I will reverse trace it. Okay, so judicial control. Then they are asking citizens charter. Citizens charter focus is on empowering citizens concerning public service delivery. Now significance of citizen charter is the heading. Okay, that is something which you know. Now how do I earn brownie points in it? Have you seen a citizen charter? कहाँ? Banks में और
Public offices.
जैसे
Police headquarters.
Police headquarters has a citizens charter. Rules and regulations are not citizens charter.
Public office is like this is public service delivery.
अरे बोलने में क्या जोर लग रहा है, बोलो। जल बोर्ड में देखा है, बिजली बोर्ड में देखा है, पासपोर्ट ऑफिस में देखा है ना? क्या होता है?
So citizens' rights and privileges. Different.
आप लोग इतना तो बता नहीं पा रहे हो। आप कह रहे हो आपने पढ़ा है, ये तो GS2 में भी आएगा। क्या किया जाए? चलिए, राइट दिस PYQ। Citizens Charter focus is on empowering citizen concerning public service delivery. Then again comes RTI. So all of them are very contemporary. 2023 again RTI. The backlash against RTI by the state hampered the citizens' right to know. Examine and point out the need to amend RTI to provide protection to RTI activists. There were cases of RTI activists being hounded, killed. Similarly, you see, accountability and control, though it is not given, whistleblower protection can be asked. Okay, so the nature of the subject, the topic that we have at hand is very, very contemporary. Now, tell me, what is accountability?
Basically, it's taking responsibility of one's actions.
Taking responsibility of one's action or holding one responsible for their actions. Okay, it is fine. This is the GS answer. Tell me a bad answer. Generic है ना? Generic है. थोड़ा सा let us make it pabadish. Okay. Isn't accountability a means? Isn't. I'm just asking you all. Isn't accountability a means which is used to control and direct administrative behavior?
Yeah, obviously, bureaucracy is needed.
Obviously, right? So, we'll have to take it in terms of administration. Okay, so it is a means which is used to control and direct administrative behavior. Now, what is the need for accountability? So that the common good can be ensured and arbitrary actions can be checked. So that a despotic, whimsical, dictatorial exercise of power and authority can be avoided. If I say that the notion of accountability has evolved with the evolution of public administration, am I correct or am I incorrect? How?
So basically, in social audits and financial audits.
ये तो example हुआ ना? How?
But in traditional bureaucracy, like in the Weaver's model, accountability was not taken so much of consideration.
Why? You say that the Weber's model, accountability is not taken into consideration, so much consideration. This is what your statement is, ma'am. Okay, so let me draw Weber's जनरल रूडिमेंट्री, जितना मुझे थोड़ा बहुत पबाड आता है उस हिसाब से.
But they were accountability, but things were not.
Wasn't there an element of supervision
Yeah.
in Weber's hierarchy? So what is it for supervision? इसीलिए बस ऐसे ही खड़े होकर देख रहा है वो. Not explicit but implicit. Also, what you are saying is that the Weber's order is what? Impersonal. So the moment you become biased or personal, you are not suited for the model. Isn't it accountability? मतलब implicitly. Okay, so that is the idea. Also, if I say, coming back to the question, that the notion of accountability has evolved with the evolution of public administration, simple question. It can be a two-line answer. Am I correct or not? And if I am correct, how am I correct? Simple idea. That means you have all studied accountability and control, but you haven't understood it. Chaliye. Tell me the evolution broadly. SMT, CMT, हाँ जी.
So manager holds account.
नहीं, पहले evolution बताओ मैं.
SMT, CMT, then.
चलो छोड़ो, ये भी छोड़ो, और इजी वे देखते हैं. हेनरी, Golembowski uses what? Isn't the locus and focus changing with evolution?
Yes.
Changing?
Yes.
है ना? है कि नहीं? When this is changing, and if I see this as the path of evolution, hasn't the scope of public administration broadened? So B is clearly greater than A. That means the state is venturing into a lot more areas than it used to. That means that the state is discharging more functions than it used to. That means the nature of those functions is far more diverse, multifaceted, multidimensional than before. So the notion of accountability will increase if I take that every function should have accountability, just the mathematical calculation. Right? So this is how am I correct? Because the nature of the state is changing. It is getting into more and more functions. This was the argument that I was trying to listen. Now, how can you prove it? You can either use Henry, this, or the generic idea CMT, SMT, the widening of the scope. So earlier, while the floor managers, let us say in the CMT, SMT era, if I just take the thought, not even the paradigms. So in the CMT, SMT era, the managers were mainly accountable for the production. In the behavioral era, they became accountable for the behavior, for the communication as well. And that was operating within. In the NPM era, they are not only accountable for what is within, but also without. ठीक है ना? Logical है ना? So this is how you should think. Okay? Now you can take it from laissez-faire to welfare to neoliberal state. The role of the state is getting diversified. Earlier, the functions were very limited: law and order maintenance, revenue collection. But now it has increased manifold. So when we look at hardcore public administration, the idea is that these very administrators or public officials are obligated to justify the resource or to report on the resource utilization and achievement of objectives, failing which they are held to account. So these terms are related: accountability, transparency, responsibility, honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, probity. Recall GS paper 4 ethics. Understood? Now Professor SR Maheshwari बुक भी आती है पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है, ओके, जस्ट लेटिंग यू नो. So SR Maheshwari actually sees administrative accountability as an organizational imperative, because ultimately holding accountability is nothing but like a performance evaluation. What went right, what went wrong. Okay? Then, okay, let me ask a question. Interesting question. Hierarchy, span of control, unity of command, okay, supervision. Do they promote accountability or not? How? So that means we can say the classical era also had a notion of accountability. This is the point I wanted to drive. ठीक है, how? चलो बताओ विवेक.
When a task is given, from chain of command who is at the higher level manager.
अरे ऐसे नहीं, ऐसे बताओगे तो सिर्फ तुम्हें समझ में आएगा या मुझे समझ में आएगा, एग्जामिनर को समझ में नहीं आएगा. You see, every organization has a goal. This goal is broken into tasks. And this task is distributed across the rank and file. So every member of the organization has to give an account of the satisfactory completion of the task in order to organization to achieve its goal. Okay? Then OP Dwivedi, कुछ भी होता है इस बोर्ड का. OP, not like this. OP Dwivedi and Joseph G. Jabra. Talking about public service accountability. Please understand, governmental accountability, organizational accountability, public service accountability. You will encounter these terms in the examination. Be very clear. It's like वो देखिए अंगूर, संजीव कुमार की पिक्चर, right? It's like that Sanjeev Kumar into multiple roles. Okay? जैसे डबल रोल होता है ना, ट्रिपल रोल, डबल रोल होता है. से बड़े मियाँ छोटे मियाँ देखी होगी. और एम आई दैट ओल्ड? नहीं. कोई रिसेंट बता दो ना कोई. हाँ, ओके, हाउसफुल 3. ओके, ठीक है. सो द पॉइंट इज, दो आई हैवंट सीन द मूवी, द पॉइंट इज दिस, that public service accountability, governmental accountability, etc. all are accountability, but when you will present in the examination, you will have to present in that context. Okay, so OP Dwivedi and Joseph G. Jabra, related to public service accountability, they say that methods by which a public agency, a public agency or a public official fulfill its duties and obligations, comma, and the process by which that agency or the public official is required to account for such actions. You see, Professor Bhattacharya, our very own Professor Mohit Bhattacharya, actually talks about that how can accountability act as a nudge or as a driving force for key administrative actors to be responsible towards their task. Okay? Understood? You see, the notion of accountability is important for public administration for one of the core reasons are, you see, traditional social contract, okay? State, society, principal, agent. But this agent has what? It has resources. It has power. How these resources are being utilized, whether they are serving public interest or not. Okay? Because the people who are comprising of the state, people who are manning the state, are ultimately humans. They are also susceptible to pulls and pressures of money, whims, fancies. There will be economic and social forces at play. And the state is composed from where these members are coming. These members are coming from the society only. So they, in a way, is a micro representation of the pluralistic nature of the society itself. So therefore, it is a summation of diverse attitudes, values, orientation. And it is through this political process that these members of the society or the groups within the society access the decision makers. Therefore, you will see that in democracies, and more so in developing democracies, and more so in developing diverse democracies like ours, the representative democracy and the need for accountability is far more. Because it is put through through some of the most rigorous tests. And through this, we bring out what public interest is. Okay. So, in this case, we will have to differentiate between administrative responsibility and administrative accountability. Responsibility would entail something which is personal, moral in character. Whereas accountability would entail specific methods, procedures to enforce that responsibility. Responsibility comes from within, accountability comes from without. Accountability has a formalistic, legalistic, procedural basis. Okay? Now, please understand, I am not going to get into the typology of accountability. Horizontal accountability, vertical accountability, fiscal accountability, process accountability, program accountability, organizational accountability, legal accountability, political accountability, moral accountability. कोई ऐसा है जो इसमें से नहीं पता या नहीं पढ़ा? Is there something that you haven't understood or don't know? ऐसा कुछ है? पढ़ा है ना? ठीक. Next, let us look at the idea of control. My first question is not even what is control. My first question is why an organization needs control at all.
So is you work according goal oriented, efficiency.
Three is right and wrong, both. Right, because these are the reasons. Now look at the definition, and this is for understanding. There's no need to go that deep in the exam. Organization is what? A group of people coming together for a common purpose. That is what organization is. Okay. If I make this very open-ended, no control, who comes in, who goes out, anybody can come in, anybody can go out, then the organization itself will not remain.
The existence of the idea of organization is itself.
Itself. So, control is intrinsic to the idea. Like we were saying that accountability is an organizational imperative. Similarly, control by this logic is also organizationally imperative. Okay. Also for the fact that yes, there is goal orientation and any organization strives to achieve those goals through usage of resources, whether human or material. And hence the right usage of those resources demand that there is an element of control, because having the right control helps in maximization of the utility of those resources so that the goal orientation can be properly directed. Okay? Understood? So, if I see control and I see administration, none of these functions can be exercised without. Okay? So, we need to see that the actions, control helps in planned action. It helps in organized effort. S की full form क्या थी?
Planning, organizing, system. What is it?
Coordination,
Reporting, budgeting.
budgeting. So reporting is an essential function of control. S की full form बताओ भाई. नालायक हो? चले जाओ यहाँ से. हाँ, कोई बता पा रहा है भैया एस की फुल फॉर्म? अरे भाई स्टाफिंग. Who will you exercise control upon? बहुत बुरे हाल है, मेंस लिख रहे हो. Okay, so control helps that the organization or the actions are planned, they are organized. The staff, इसको ना कविता की तरह पढ़ो. Read it like a poem. Okay, it helps in keeping the staff goal directed. It helps in decision making. It helps in coordination amongst the members and coordination of the resource distribution and utilization. It makes the system more responsive. आपसे responsive ले जाओ. Then bring it to reporting. Reporting is an essential part of control, which helps not only transmit the control but also check the effectiveness of the control. Right? Resources तो है ही budgeting. Okay, learn it like this. बहुत simple दो तीन आपको गुरु मंत्र दे रहा हूं. One is ecology, evolution and post-decorum. These things they are like, lemon and water. Add salt, sugar, make shikanji. Add soda, make mojito, virgin mojito. Add, vodka, make a mojito, right? Decorate it in a fancy manner, make a lemonade. These are like those things. The one who can learn to play with these three things can do anything in public administration. Okay. Now, you see, the control itself, if you look, it has a future orientation. It is forward looking. That means you are controlling the future actions, not the past one. Also, control is a continuous perennial process. Also, the control system needs to be well integrated and coordinated. Otherwise, the force of control or the effectiveness of control will go away. People should know what their targets are, what their deadlines are, in how much time, in how much resources they are going to achieve. Process of control actually exerts a psychological pressure on the individuals to perform. So if I take, organizational theories or theories of leadership, where will you put control? Which kind of motivator, contribution, satisfaction? Link it. Kind of authority, where will you place it? For example, if I talk about theory X and theory Y, which will have a tighter institutional control, whereas a more human oriented control will be, आया समझ में how we need to link? Okay. The ultimate aim of control is to achieve coordination in the activities. So when Bernard says that an organization is a social system of coordinated activities, what kind of view does Bernard is having on control? बिहेवियरल सेंट्रिक. वो उसका ट्रेड थोड़ी बदल जाएगा. बर्नार्ड तो बर्नार्ड ही रहेगा ना. ओके, सो द पॉइंट इज दैट since control helps in achieving organizational goals, it is a key element to achieve organizational effectiveness. Now, if you look at the typology of control, there are internal control, external control, budgetary control, control over manpower, okay, administrative ethics, code of conduct, organization and method system. Okay, leadership, largely these things are internal mechanisms of control. If I look at external control, then there would be legislative control over administration. Okay, parliamentary debate, discussions, questions, audit, report, committees. Okay, similarly there will be differences in the presidential system, parliamentary system, and republicans and non-republican entities. Then the executive control with regards to political, policy, personnel or human resources, lawmaking. Okay, there would be methods, for example, inspections, audits, etc. Similarly, there would be O&M, leadership, administrative ethics. Okay, so these are the heads that I am actually saying: the legislative control, executive control, judicial control, and whatever am I saying, budget, O&M, leadership. Okay, so what you will do is do two things. One, you will draw this entire matrix. Okay, and write 1, 2, 3 words maximum, not sentences or paragraph, against each of these heads. Also, detailed notes on executive, legislative, judicial control vis-a-vis the methods, their positive, negative, limitations, challenges. Okay, understood? ठीक है, ये हो जाएगा. Done? This should not take more than 30 minutes. Now, let me touch upon a more philosophical idea. Any doubts whatsoever, friends watching us online? Though if we'll do a threadbare analysis, all of them will have certain minute differences, but for the sake of our examination, we can take them together. Okay? First of all, tell me, is it an external control or an internal control? External. Okay? Because in a democratic society, it is the people who are the sovereign, the ultimate sovereign. The nature of this control is informal and indirect. है कि नहीं? We are not, those societies or country wherein the direct democracy is there. There is always an indirect democracy. There is an effort to move towards direct democracy by means of inclusion, participatory nature, and all those things. Okay. Now, there are various devices. Why am I putting this up? and this is for a reason, because elections have happened in India, UK recently, American elections are obviously due. Okay, so while the system of elections, right, and actually plug the Indian polity elections here for greater understanding. Indian polity elections, plug that aspect here, plug that knowledge here. Okay, so there would be certain debates regarding accountability and control. For example, the effectiveness of the electoral process itself. I'm not saying that elections have been carried out peacefully. The effectiveness at a far more conscious level, far more real level, purposeful level, that has come into the question. In light of what? In light of social media, in light of information overload, in light of echo chambers, in light of fake news, in light of election manipulation through information management. So there can be a question that on the one hand, social media, or the new media as it is called, has enhanced popular, public, democratic control over administration. It is also, or rather, it is giving a false sense of control. Questions like these. Also, when you look at elections as a process and the popular control, to what extent can you control the state? Through a well-established process. Can you recall? So the right to recall is again a debate. Is the public consultation, consultative committees which are formed, enough? Role of pressure groups and civil societies. Role of pressure group and civil society. So you see, with regards to pressure groups, if we see, they originated in the American context. Okay? So as the name suggests, pressure groups, a section of the general public organizes itself, right? And some special interest is the focus. And they actually pressurize the arms of the state, whether executive, legislature, judiciary. Right? In India, we hold judiciary at a far more sacrosanct level, but there are countries whose judiciaries have been impressionable. Okay. So they hold these arms of the state under pressure through lobbying to basically satisfy their interests. In India also, you will see the pressure groups have taken an Indian route. Industrial bodies, religious organizations, suddenly they will impression, a movie comes and some Sena will rise. ये तो जी हमारे उसके अगेंस्ट है, मतलब हमारी इथोस के अगेंस्ट है, इसको बैन करो, मत देखो, है ना? So things like that. Also, we will have to understand that these pressure groups act as a liaison between the people they represent and the administration. They act as a channel of communication. And this channel is a two-way channel. They can inform, consult, as well as they can get the feedback. They by mean administration. Also, these pressure groups can take up the form of advisory roles as well, because they carry sector expertise. But the moment these pressure groups start representing narrow, parochial, vested interest and resort to undemocratic means, then there is a problem. Okay? Similarly, the public sentiment and the public opinion also play its part, acting as an agent of control. हवा बन जाती है ना, कहते हैं ना हवा बन गई है, ऐसी हवा है, right? Like some people in elections built a sort of a, air or opinion that 400 par reservation bahar, that kind of, right? So that cut the ice with a lot of the people. That is how in democracy the control is exercised. Okay. You see, administration, now here comes a contradiction. Administration is supposed to be an unimpressionable entity, professional, rational, neutral, impartial, immune to these influences. But administration works within the public. So it cannot be immune, right? While retaining rationality, the administration has to be sensitive to public opinion. If that public opinion is justified on logic, it can actually help administration legitimize a particular action. One. Two, it increases the implementation quotient of that action because it is widely accepted. Also, if the public opinion fails the litmus test of rationality, it is the duty of the administration to send the correct picture on the ground. But the problem is that the ordinary citizen, the Aam Aadmi, the mango man, okay.
We can fix the example of the farmer protest that they have.
Right, you can take the example of farmer protest. Right, you can take that, but I would advise you to against taking examples which are controversial. Either take something historical which is proved, well accepted, or something which is not controversial. For example, public opinion, expressed or public opinion regarding certain aspects related to personal laws. Right? At times you see the countries have to act according, public sentiment is a very important thing. But the point is it should be rational. It should not compromise on rule of law. It should not compromise on human rights. If today the public opinion will say that go and hang a person X, should the state do this? No. No. So it has to be calibrated. It has to be managed. If it is something which is logical, should be done. If it is not, then it is the responsibility of the state to actually correct that. While public opinion can act as a measure of control, it cannot be used as a measure to make the state hostage to majoritarian characteristics. Because in a democracy, you rule by majority, but the government is not majoritarian. The government is for all. So by that logic, there would be some religious fundamentalists from a majority community, then they will annihilate the entire minority. But do we want so? No. Is it rational? No. Is it humane? No, it is not. Okay, so things like that. And there is an issue which I am saying with the public opinion, that it is largely uninformed. The public is they are laymen. They do not understand the complexity of the public affairs. And they take a short-term view of things. They are emotional. Okay. So public opinions are important to provide legitimacy to a governmental action. but those opinions need to be managed. In a democracy, you cannot go without managing the public opinion. Okay? Understood? Next, let us look at the citizen and administration. I don't know, man. We'll have to see. You see, administration is an action part of the government. Okay, public administration. And you see, the administration is actually there to render the services to the citizens. How? By executing policies, implementation of programs, laws. Okay? Now, the idea is fairly simple that the administration citizen or citizen groups interact. And for this process to run in a productive manner, in an effective manner, in a harmonious manner, multiple theories have been talked about. With regards to administration, it has been talked about that the administration has to be citizen centric. Also, from the political point of view, it has been said that the participative administration, an administration that is open, transparent, and making people the stakeholder in the overall administration helps achieve better results. Also, in a democracy, the administrators are nothing but servants of the public or public servants and should not act as the masters of the citizens. Okay? So the inward looking, refer to the bureaucratic critique, inward looking orientation, self maximizers. Okay? The idea of displacement of goal, that is what is being questioned in this larger ecosystem which I am trying to present. Okay? So they should work for the public interest, so that the citizens are not deprived of their rights, services, and treated with dignity, respect. What? In an impartial, reasonable, dignified manner. Also, you can take it back to the social contract theory. where administration is just the part of the state, and it is to act as like an agent for the society. Now there are problems at both the end. Problems are that from the state end, the problems are well known. Inward orientation, right? Self-obsession, self-aggrandizing bureaucracy that we talked about. All those things are there. But on the citizen side too, you see that citizens do not cooperate with the administration. Do not cooperate. A small example is COVID and mask mandate. अरे क्या हो गया, जरा सा ही तो नीचे है, अरे उतने में कोविड फैल जाएगा, लगा लो भाई मास्क. More commonly you can see it in day-to-day life, helmet over two-wheelers. So the point is this, that the citizens actually do not cooperate with the administration.
Because of lack of trust.
Not because of essentially lack of trust, I would say lack of interest. Yes, in some measures lack of trust. I mean, do you not trust the helmet that it will protect you in case you fall? Right? You might have a lack of trust reporting, let us say, a crime or a murder or a theft, that I will be embroiled in it, right? I will be asked to appear before courts again and again. I am a daily wage laborer. I do not have this time, etc.
During COVID vaccines, there were few communities who were having doubt on.
Right, they were having doubts. Okay, it's okay to have doubts, no issues, right? But to actually spread vaccine phobia on unfounded grounds was not ready. I mean, I hope you would have read the news wherein regarding this Serum Institute vaccine. What was the name? COVID Shield. There was a case that, okay, 0.01%, 1 out of 10,000 person or 1 out of lakh, something was there, is not getting benefited. Arre,
That's so very.
that is the reality of clinical trials, bhaiya.
AstraZeneca did different.
Right. That's the rationality. I mean, what is the guarantee? Even of a paracetamol. In case of a normal viral fever, that it will cure. Some people need nimsolide. They do not get healed by paracetamol. That's fine. But that is an exception, not a routine. But the point is that they do not report things, antisocial elements. Sometimes citizens actually acquire violent character in demonstrations and protest, damage public property. So, whenever we look at the citizen and administration, we have to take a holistic view. Holistic, that this relationship has multiple shades. Shades that are political, social, cultural, economical. Okay? Judicial. So how do you bring about better relations? That means you will have to work across these interfaces. You will have to carry out political reforms, social reforms, cultural reforms, economic reforms, judicial reforms.
More on communication and human interaction.
Also, how will you ultimately you can increase communication? You can use Jan Sabhas, but the public will have faith in the state when the decisions arrived at that Jan Sabha get executed. So you will need to create certain institutions. For example, with regards to politically and corruption, ombudsman. Okay, you will have to create grievance redressal forums. You will have to create regulatory authorities. With regards to judicial, you will have to improve the workings of the courts. Also, enhance the conviction rate, reduce the pendency. So these things will have to work across. So when we'll see ARC, we'll see what are the problems with the administration and the solution, and that you can actually pin up with this aspect. Also, the need for administrative decentralization is something that I have talked about again and again. Also, with regards to the role of media, I have highlighted certain aspects through PYQs. The traditional aspect: encourage people to participate, act as agents of information dissemination, awareness of rights, duties, entitlements, promote rule of law, okay, fight against corruption, advocate for good governance, right? All those things are very regular. That is why I'm not getting into it. Okay. Similar is the case of interest groups. There are various NGOs, various types of interest group, advocacy groups, complaint forums, expert bodies, like for example FICCI and all those things, right? All those things are there. So I'm not getting into them either. Also, please understand, with regards to interest groups, pressure groups, not only you can link accountability and control, but also development administration. Now, I want to draw your attention regarding interest groups, and obviously, interest groups is broader area. You can use it for the broader aspect of civil society. Is the pluralist and neo-corporatist theory on role of interest group where in public policy making. So you see, pluralist actually look at a more realism oriented, realist description of politics and policy making. As the name suggests, they actually visualize this space as a marketplace where multiple people, multiple perspectives are represented. Various interests actually compete to put further their views towards the government and get the policy actions in their own favor. So there would be a lobby which will say don't grow tobacco, and then there would be a farmers lobby which will say don't tax tobacco. Okay. So there is competition. So there is not going to be a single winner. There is always going to be a balance. Okay. But it is not a very ideal way of representation to bring about policy changes, because each of these groups will be unequal. Why am I telling you this question? Because a question that interest groups, vested interest wala abhi bataya tha na, that the larger group will capture the policy. So you will have to provide that sort of a theoretical heft. Okay. So like I said, different groups will have different levels of organizations. Some will be well organized, some will not be so well organized. Resources, finance, membership. Some will work for the poor, some will work for, let us say, displaced children, some will work for deaf and dumb, some will work for environment, etc., etc. And obviously the policy is going to get tilted towards the better represented or better capturing groups. Also, in a democracy, you see, the government will naturally lean towards the more dominant groups. Why? Because their existence is based on them. Otherwise, they will be voted out. And this is from where the populism actually fuels. Okay? So this actually leads to an elite capture, where elite groups determine the policy. And they are the prime movers. Now, a thing has happened, especially in US, which is referred to as hyper-pluralism. Now, a lot many of people have become a part of that elite. So initially, when that elite used to be somewhat an exclusive club, has now become anything like everybody is on an equal footing. So this is referred as hyper-pluralism, and hence it has made the space more competitive again. But in general sense, we can say that the elite groups have an advantage.
So hyperpluralism is a positive concept.
Hyperpluralism, yes, it's a positive concept in that sense because it dilutes the elitism in one sense of things. Then neo-cooperatism. Neo-cooperatism. You see, it's a new form of the traditional state sort of cooperatism that used to exist in authoritarian systems. For example, the cooperatism in which the corporates or these interests are nothing but stooges of the state itself. The recent example is China. Look at what happened to Alibaba. It's like Charles Chor came and took him away. Okay. So, but this happened. This happened under Hitler, where all the businesses, economic activities were captured by non-Jews, Germans. And you see how anti-Semitism and Jew hatred prevailed during that time. It happened under Franco in Spain, almost a contemporary of Hitler. So in this system, what happens? The society is seen as a corporate entity that is itself a united and hierarchical body. So the state corporatism was that the state dominates all the sections of the society. That is the business, military, labor, all of them work in the interest of the government. But you see, that was a coercive approach, state corporatism. You work with us or you are against us. Neo-corporatism, as it has emerged, is non-coercive. It is based on the idea of voluntary agreement between government and labor business interest. The goals are primarily economic, so that the country can be competitive in international trade, maintain the balance. For example, big companies in India, big private entities in India, Reliance, Adani, etc., ramping up capacities, getting into defense, right? Working on R&D related to, for example, 5G connectivity, okay, components, so on and so forth. So what is happening in this interest groups? These interest groups are again becoming the part of the policy elite. So some say that the elite, there is no difference between pluralistic and new corporatization. It is how you arrive at that is somewhat different. Understood? So this should be kept in mind. Similar is the case of voluntary organizations, NGOs, the relationship that it has, civil society. Okay, with regards to civil society, write some scholarly views. It might help you in the exam. Larry Diamond. Larry Diamond. He says civil society represents the realm of organized social life. The realm of organized social life that is voluntary, comma, self-generating, comma, largely self-supporting, and bound by a legal order or set of shared values. So in that sense, it is saying it is different from the society in general, because the citizens are acting in a collective manner, in a public sphere. S.K. Das defines civil society as the organized society over which the state rules. Next, view of George Huggins. George, Huggins. He says, civil society is a social space distinct from the state and business sectors, but having a close relationship with the state and functioning through associations. Jeffrey Alexander. Next, Jeffrey Alexander. This is one of those, short succinct definitions. Civil society is an inclusive, umbrella-like concept referring to a plethora of institutions, outside the state. Okay. Now, you see, civil society, as we see, by definition, a non-political entity, something which is lying outside the realm of the state. In its evolution, complex social and economic forces were at work, especially during the 17th and the 18th century in Europe. Because you see, the absolute monarchy, look at the time, ecology of that time. The absoluteness of the monarchy, the rule of Henry and others, were slowly giving away to more democratic institutions. Also, the learning, exploration, etc. were coming up. So the power actually devolved from the monarchs to the popular assemblies, popular councils, parliaments, or legislature, howsoever we may put it. And this idea of something which is not government but yet important started gaining currency, and different interpretations of civil society started coming. Okay? So, there is this political conception which is behind the civic institutions and political activity, which was responsible for the coming up of the civil society. Because this society, which was emerging, now started coming up with certain unnegotiable components. For example, constitution, concept of citizenship, rights, democratic representation. Okay, and hence these societal factors and political factors actually gave rise to the civil society. Sociologically, if we see, it is an intermediary. It is an intermediate associational, institutional idea between the state and the society, which has a far greater degree of autonomy, voluntary participation, etc. So often you will see that this political view of civil society and the sociological view are at loggerheads. Okay? But the recent or the more modern outlook was given by Locke. Locke to pata hai? John Locke. So, according to Locke, the civil society was constituted by property, labor exchange and consumption. Now, what happens based on this view? Because property, consumption, labor exchange is being talked about. Adam Smith. Pata hai? Adam Smith? Heard about the gentleman? Actually paints the civil society as a bourgeois entity, as a market organized sphere of necessity that is driven by self-interested notions. It was Hegel, we have referred to Hegel, who developed the modern understanding, which actually disassociates civil society from the state and puts it in its place as we know it, based on the philosophy of rights, his work. The middle stage between the family and the state. Okay? Later, thinkers like J.S. Mill saw civil society not as a precursor but as a parallel mover with the state. It was Alex de Tocqueville, Alex Alexde space Tocqueville. Professor Bhattacharya actually credits Tocqueville in establishing the civil society as a concept in relation to democracy. That it is healthy for a democracy. Theorists like Robert Putnam link civil society to social capital. Link civil society to social capital. So you see, this social capital approach, isn't it reverse of what pluralistic approach was? Where we were talking about the elite notions, right? Similarly, Gramsci, a neo-Marxist. We have talked about Gramsci before, right? He sees civil society not only as an embodiment of the practices of production and exchange relations, but also as a set of social relations between individual and state. The neo-Marxists follow this relative autonomy approach, which recognize the limitations of the state-centric theory and encourage a shift from state to the civil society. Also, the liberal democratic space is something that has always been related to the civil society. Okay, this is what I wanted to convey about civil society to all of you. Next is the Citizens Charter, RTI, etc. I hope you can do this on your own. Also, while doing Citizens Charter and RTI, do a conceptual background of it, in the sense that especially Citizens Charter, RTI, information laws emerged in the post-NPA era, right? Post-NPA era, beginning of NPM, that is where these ideas start taking shape globally. You have Freedom of Information Act, etc. In India, you have had RTI. Okay. Similar is the case with social audit. You see, basic postulates, issues, challenges, solutions, example. This is a standard template in which you would have made the notes. But I want you to rework those notes in light of the PYQs as we have seen. Okay, and identify the necessary elements. So with this, we have come to the close on accountability and control. Now, let us move towards another unit, that is administrative law. How old is administrative law?
Very old, like Cotterias and Shanstha.
Since nowadays,
As old as administration. We can simply say that administrative law is as old as administration. But its significance as a matter of study, its significance in administration gets highlighted in the 20th century as a branch of public law that is distinct from constitution. Okay, so there have been multiple definitions of administrative law. Okay, a branch of law that determines organization, powers, and duties of administrative authorities, the legal requirements governing their operation, remedies available to those adversely affected by administrative actions. Bernard Squartz. Similarly, Kenneth Davis says that it's a law that is concerned with the powers and procedures of administrative agencies, especially judicial review of governing action. So when you look at Davis, Davis is actually viewing it from American lens, which is actually emphasizing on the procedural aspects of administrative bodies, unlike the UK, which does not emphasize on the procedural aspects that much. इवॉर्ड जेनिंग्स पढ़ा होगा ना, लक्ष्मीकांत में भी इधर उधर दिया होता है. He is actually, his approach highlights the British perspective. Administrative law is the law related to administration. It determines the organization, powers, and duties of administrative authority. Then, of course, I hope you know our very own friend. That's okay. So this difference between the British and the American perspective, okay, write five points about each. Okay. Also, the definition by Supreme Court of India is essential. पता है? नहीं? Okay. Supreme Court of India says that administrative law deals with the structure, powers, and functions of the organs of administration. Of the organs of administration. Semicolon. The limits of their powers, the methods and procedures followed by them in exercising their powers and functions, semicolon, the methods by which their powers are controlled, including the legal remedies available to a person against them, including the legal remedies available to a person against them, when his rights are infringed by their operation. So, broadly we can say, that's the end of the Supreme Court of views on administrative law. Why I am giving you this is for the fact that it is first, one of the most comprehensive ideas, second, it is Indian. So, the composition, power, structure, functioning, including the limits on them and the procedures to get a grievance redressed by any or many of these things. Okay. Also in operation, when we say, when the quasi-legislative, quasi-judicial powers of the administration. Okay. So that is, we can broadly say that the administrative law is all about. I am not getting into the common law system and the civil law system here. That is something that you have already studied as part of the foundation. So the traces of administrative law, the sources of administrative law include the constitution, laws, charters, resolutions, ordinances, rules and regulations, orders and directives, judicial decisions. Now write 150 words on each. Administrative law in US, administrative law in Britain, administrative law in India, and Droit administratif. ये तो पता है, ड्रॉइट एडमिनिस्ट्राफ तो पता है, फ्रांस. Okay. Now, before we move ahead, let us survey the questions that have been asked. Roughly 20 marks. Okay. Every year out of 400. Now you see the questions which are there are application oriented, okay, and they do not really ask you what is administrative law, but still focused on meaning and significance of administrative law. See, 2016-2017, both are on the meaning itself. The central concern of administrative law has been the legal limitation on administrative discretion. So herein you will have to talk about secular concept, administrative discretion as well, and then bring in the concept of administrative law to justify the demand. Similarly, 2017. In 2017, we saw this getting asked for 25 marks in total unit. administrative law is recognized by its substance rather than its form. Discuss. So again, a question on a metaphysical level. Then you have the views related to delegated legislation. Okay. So 2016, 2017 we saw meaning, significance. 2017 we saw delegated legislation once. The principle of DL, delegated legislation, is, I think, right, but I will emphasize that it is well for Parliament to keep a watchful and even a zealous eye on it at all stages. Herbert Morrison. So the risks of delegated legislation and how parliamentary oversight or some sort of an oversight can minimize those risks. Then 2018 is actually talking about dicey. The journey of administrative law has moved much beyond dicey. That means it is talking about the prevailing notions or whatever development has happened in the administrative law. Now please understand, we talked about how the idea of, we drew this number line, no? Accountability and control, etc. How this has evolved with the evolution of administration. Similarly, the rule of administrative law has moved much beyond dicey. Okay. Then on the implicative aspects of delegated legislation, a question is asked. That is, delegated legislation has become a strategic tool in the hands of the executive despite its utility. So a criticism, one of the criticism. Then again 2019, meaning, scope. Red light and green light theories provide contrasting approaches to the role of administrative law. Which of the two theories will be effective in achieving objectives of administrative law? Do this PYQ. What is this red light and green light theory? Then again, the meaning and significance 2020. Arbitrariness in the application of rule of law is the primary cause of poor governance. Such a generic question. 2020 again, a 20 marker. Development in the field of administrative law reflect an increasingly blurred boundary between the state and the society, between the justice and administration. Has administrative law become more constitutional than the constitutional law itself? Then a question on judicial review. So, judicial review, prevention of misuse or abuse of administrative power and provision of suitable remedies are the basic principles of administrative law. Justify how various organs of the state are able to uphold these principles. So you see how wide these questions are spread. That even within the meaning and scope, we are getting so many different hues. Next, all tribunals are courts, but all courts are not tribunals. Explain. Then again, meaning, scope, coming back in 2022. So every year, two themes are getting asked. Remember this. Not a single theme, but two themes are being prominent every year. The administrative state is the creation of power to bind us with rules that are not made by legislature. Discuss the constitutionality of administrative state and its future. We talked about a scholar and a view who is looking at it as a preserve of administration. किसकी बात करी थी हमने? अरे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव लॉ में किसका व्यू लिया था? Right. Here you can use the view of Davis. Okay. Then 2023 again delegated legislation is back. So meaning, scope, significance, delegated legislation and administrative tribunals. Subordinate legislation has its drawbacks. This does not negate the fact that it is also quite beneficial. So with regards to delegated legislation, if you see, questions are fairly straight, which can be made out of its advantages, disadvantages, issues, challenges and the meaning. But with regards to meaning of administrative law, we are getting somewhat complex set of questions. Okay. Next would be Dicey's vision of administrative law. Okay. That is something that I would take up in the next class. Alright. So, if there is anything that you want to ask, please ask and let's call it a class for today.
So basic feature of US and British was like the procedure and law.
Obsession with the procedure. So how you are actually viewing administrative law. So what they are making the procedure as the focus, that if the procedure is fine, that means the action is legal. Whereas Britishers are looking at a far more substance. That is why the rule of law idea or the procedure established by law. Two different ideas come now. Do you have a question, Shweta? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, friends.